agricultural laborers and CPI for rural laborers. Now these from last year are getting kind of have stopped actually now. Now the Government of India has what it does is divides all these core indexes into two broad indexes. Basically now are called CPI rural population and CPI urban population. And it's not the next is not working, otherwise I'll show you later. So, and the frequency is monthly, and WPI also has to make frequency monthly. The data will be available once in a month. Earlier CPI was available once a month only, with a 2 month lag, and WPI earlier was available for every week lag, which is after 2 weeks you will get to know what the WPI is. Now you will not get to know after till the month is over. That's the change. In India, WPI was a unique kind of a statistic which was available weekly, which is not a normal thing in the other countries of the world. And surprisingly, it was available from 1935 onwards. So, very long period that we have had this index available.
What was the lag of WPI? What was the lag for WPI data? That was for 2 months.
No, 2 weeks.
2 weeks lag.
Yeah. CPI was 2 months lag, and WPI was 2 weeks lag. But now, anyway, that's history now, because we will not have these things anymore. So now that we have CPI urban and rural, and I was just trying to show you the latest data on the net. But for some reason, net is not working. So
now WPI is 1 month lag.
Yeah, obviously it will be 1 month lag, because they can actually provide 2 weeks lag, but this information will come by once in a month now. So that's now interestingly, there were some other interesting. I don't know if you call it humorous or interesting. There's something called Google. You heard about Google? Google Price Index. I don't know. I talked about it already. I think I talked about it, so I don't have to spend much time. So Google, since also has become an important source for people to shop. Google Shopping and few other things are there. And those electronic, whenever you shopping anything online, the information is available in the real time. So effectively, what this does is the price information can also be available. The only problem with the Google Price Index, can you imagine what the problem with Google Price Index? It will be available almost minute to minute.
Only net transaction.
One is only net transaction. Anything else?
Places where internet is not there.
No, that is one problem. That's net. People who are shopping on the net, they only get it. Otherwise, but if you take developed countries, this is quite okay now, because even now net shopping is becoming a common thing.
Constantly fluctuating. Limited to the commodity which is sold.
But now actually everything is getting sold. Now you see fashion products are getting sold, shoes are getting sold, which we never thought will be sold earlier.
Constantly fluctuating.
That's not a problem. That even your regular prices will be constantly fluctuating, but here fluctuation will be minute to minute. But what is the main serious problem compared to what we have discussed? That's why I think it has gone out of fact. So I'm not taking very seriously, although it came as a big news item at one stage. It doesn't have a fixed basket. So you cannot really make any comparative statements. Every day people will be shopping different things, which means your basket will be changing every day. Unless somebody fixes the basket. And that basket has to be representative basket. Google has no way to do that. That is representative basket.
Maybe after a while they can.
Yeah, which means if you do minute to minute, you really cannot say anything about comparison. You cannot really say this is the inflation every minute. Unless you say, I'm fixing these products, which means a lot of products will be ignored. Either they will be represented, in the next minute they will not be represented. That's the kind of, exactly the opposite of what you discussed CPI or WPI. What's happening here? The basket is fixed. And then
the price is taken on dipstick. Okay, today what is the price?
Yeah, every kind of a
At that whenever you decide.
so you can actually you can do that to some extent. Like you take the Google prices and match it with the commodity basket, which the CPI only have. Then it is possible to do it. But as of now, Google was just trying to show it with its own the e-commerce data, and obviously there are positives there, but there are negatives also. Similarly, just CPI positive and negative. CPI is positive, that you get the information. Negative is it has a lot of these quality changes issues, new products, substitution issues. Yes.
So I don't understand. Why we need to fix the basket in CPI was that so that we are able to
Compare.
To
Time period.
within the time period and it's manually taken.
No, you can do it manually or you can do it electronically.
But whereas in the Google, the entire lot, when the Google site will take the entire transactions, all the transactions have been reflected. So it is the same with the.
No, but the thing is, the transactions will change every day, every minute. So you're not keeping the weight of the commodity thing, which means you cannot really compare.
No, but then that is my choice. Like you can pick up things like, okay, these are the ones which I want. Comparison between.
So what does that tell us? That tells us that Google can provide the data, but the weightaging, whatever the weightage you want to give, that has to be done through some mechanism. Google doesn't have that mechanism. That is the only perspective. If Google develops that, but again, then you'll say that now a private company will decide what is the price index. That's another, there will be whole Pandora's box will open up.
And then it may not be representative. All the items part of the basket may not be traded online.
So that's okay. That's okay. The thing is, at least your data, see, Google and the government agencies actually can tie up. So that will be a best solution because again, government agencies' problem is data collection is a big problem. Now Google's online data, especially in the US where Google is a very big operator or some other electronic operators there, they can provide instant information. And then whatever information you still do not have, which are not online transactions, that you can collect. So your data collection time and the staff requirements, cost to collect the data reduces significantly. So I see both as complementing each other rather than competing with each other. Because the problem with government agencies, how do you collect the data fast in a reliable way, which they can give you. So that's the okay, so that's now let's kind of go to the related topic, which we were just started yesterday, but couldn't really go forward very much. Now, there is a link between the stock market and the inflation and the interest rate. Normally, we know that whenever inflation rate goes up, what does RBI tend to do? Reduce the interest rate, isn't it? And we've done the present value. What is the present value? Profit, which is total revenue and total cost, at 1 plus R raised to power C.
What is the value of
Anything, house or stock or anything. So stock market. Now, the moment RBI touches the rate of interest, raises it or lowers it, what will happen?
present value?
Present value is
The rate of interest, reason the RBI reduce the rate of interest. So what happened to stock market? You've seen it last couple of days.
It goes up.
It goes up. So similarly now RBI kind of suppose believes that increase in interest rate. That immediate stock market. Now you see the link between the stock market and the inflation rate also.
Or as soon as you decrease that, your stock market will fall.
That's the link now you see. Now RBI only you had some broad idea, but this formula makes it very very clear.
What is 5?
5 is nothing but your total revenue and total cost. Total revenue, total cost. That's profit of a company. That is fixed. We are not changing that.
Total revenue is total cost.
Cost. Yes. Total revenue minus total cost divided by 1 plus R is 30. So if the R changes rate of interest, you'll immediately have this present value affected. If this is going up, this will go down. Right. So now that's the link to the stock market and the interest rate. I mean, this is only interest rate link. I'm not saying there are other factors also which affect stock market. So I'm kind of abstracting away from them.
Stock market.
EV is present value, which we discussed in the first stage. And this will discuss, second part we will discuss later, the interest rate and the exchange rate. Yesterday I got to get a newspaper. Today's newspaper as you've seen made an interesting graph in the first page. There's a stock market declining and there's a FDI outflow taking place, and the rupee exchange rate is falling as well. So what must be happening? Why is the graph self-accelerated? When FDI withdraw, what happens? Stock market is going to go down. And what happens to exchange rate when they withdraw?
Rupee weakens.
Rupee weakens. Because their demand for dollar goes up. So, and when they leave the country, they will sell the Tata Motors share. They sell it in what currency? If you are an investor in the stock market, foreign investor, you are selling your shares.
Indian currency.
If there is Indian currency, you get a rupee and you want to go out of the country. So you take the rupees to the RBI and tell them give us dollar. So RBI will suddenly have rupees and the demand for dollar goes up, so dollar will appreciate. By default, rupee will depreciate. That's a simple graph which you've seen. Today morning, let me see the net is working. These publications are very good. CPI separating rural and urban areas and combined. This is a report. If anybody wants weightages, what are the weightages, how they are decided, weighting diagram, and these are the main products. So this is the old season, new series, all India weight. And you see here, weightages. In the rural, cereals are 19%. In the urban, it's 8%. Total is average is 14%. Pulses, meat products, oil, fat, eggs, vegetables, fruit, sugar, condiments, spices, non-alcoholic beverages, prepared meals, pan, tobacco, food, beverages. Total food and beverages is 59% in the rural areas and the less in the urban areas. The special thing is that rural people are relatively poor. You are admitting it. It's part of the income, not part of the consumption pattern.
Percentage of their
Percentage of total expenditure, how much goes to what?
Our expenditure or buying all these things?
Yes.
If we are buying less in the
Yeah, because your income is more.
percentage.
It's percentage of your expenditure. The rural people spend 60% of their income or expenditure on food. The urban people 27%. The reason also again, urban people are from very different backgrounds. Like you and me may not be spending on 10% on the food articles. Then fuel 10%, 8%. Clothing 5%, 3.9%. Housing 0 for the rural areas, 22% for the urban areas. Like miscellaneous about 28%, which means all the industrial products and all will be there. And 50 services: education, medical, recreation, transport, personal care, household requirements, and others. And that is 28%. And that's your weightage. And the urban areas, what are the ways you collect the data? All the information which you want to know about, what is the mechanism through which the data is collected, what are the towns are covered, all that information is there in this particular document. Previous price data, price collection in the rural areas, how it is done, computation of indices, dissemination, revision. This is state-wise: Andhra, Arunachal, Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Goa, Gujarat. This is the weightages for each state is also different, which we were discussing last time. Then you have other Haryana, Himachal, Jammu, Jharkhand, Karnataka, Kerala, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Odisha, Punjab, Rajasthan, Sikkim, Tamil Nadu, Tripura, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, and some others doing directly. And in Delhi, you can see the total food. Pretty high in the Delhi. This must be rural area. This is urban. Rural Delhi, or outskirts and all will be there. And urban Delhi, I'm sure the number will be much smaller. 34.1%. The urban areas, again, urban areas are different levels of income in different cities. And number of towns covered. Each city, each state, Jammu and Kashmir, for instance, 11 towns are covered. 28 quotations are taken, and so on and so forth. Uttar Pradesh 18 towns are taken, 92 locations are taken. So you can actually have now index for each particular city, state, and within a state, 92 reflects Uttar Pradesh has 92 different locations. So data is collected like that. So you can actually get the information that way. This is gaps and subgroups and group shares. All India shares and the state-wise shares. And this is a very big document. You can just have a look. So this is the data news about that. Okay, we were looking for something else.
Google will say so.
Sorry, wait. In the stock market, this is the India Stock Exchange rate. Just yesterday, one day only, you can see. Almost tracking the two at the same time. Okay. So that, I mean, we'll discuss in more detail later on, but that gives you some idea about the linkage between the FDI goes or FII goes, not FDI so much. So FDI cannot go immediately. FII, whenever they leave the country, then immediately there is an impact on your stock market and also the exchange rate. Two things are immediately affected because most of the FII is going to the stock market. So obviously, when will they withdraw? When will they withdraw? When the one is the Indian market not giving them return, or some other market are giving better returns than India. Even if Indian market is giving good returns, but suddenly some other market is likely to give better returns. In that case also it will lead. So whenever like European crisis will happen, Indian stock market will go up because they will kind of unload there and start buying here. But the US or the European stock market start doing well, then they will sell here. Buying there. So that's why the stock market also has another reason to fluctuate. Because Indian now, the moment you have FII coming into Indian market, effectively you have made your stock market global. Now the stock market will be affected by the international event also.
But right now we are not having Europe or US markets favorable. Still FII
yeah, but that's only two examples. But there are a lot of other countries. I mean, Indonesia will be there, Malaysia will be there, many other countries will be there. I'm just giving you two examples. I mean, that's not the only story. I mean, India is a relatively small market compared to whatever the Europe and the US. Unless there is a deep crisis, then this might happen. But again, right now the French elections have happened, so that just see what happened to the stock market in Europe and the US. That has had a negative impact because your Democrat left front guys have gone to power, Holland Day or somebody. and Sarkozy has left. He's lost the election. And in Greece there is a hung parliament, which also is kind of giving a signal that whatever you're doing is possibly not what the market wants or the people want. So, simple definition of inflation, it refers to a sustained increase in the average level of prices, which means all the prices are going for a sustained period, but not like one shot. It's just not that inflation goes up today and then tomorrow is down, that will not cause that inflation. It persists, that's the persistence is very important. And this inflation we've already discussed. India is not an exception. India is not really, compared to last year, inflation has come down, but still it's on the higher side. Europe, US, inflation has come down significantly in the last 3-4 years. Deflation, we have discussed Japan and the US, and hyperinflation has been in many countries. We have discussed this yesterday a bit. Brazil, Germany, Hungary, and case study we discussed yesterday, so I will not spend time on this. And this is the definition of hyperinflation, which I discussed yesterday, when inflation per month crosses 30%. And one interesting joke about the hyperinflation. In hyperinflation, you do not lend or borrow from friends. But if you feel somebody you don't want to be friendly with, then that's the best time to borrow and lend, because you'll get rid of your friend. Why? Because if you borrow from a friend, say whatever, $1,000 or whatever the local currency, and it's a hyperinflation, when you pay back, will be worth nothing. And the guy will be very mad with you, obviously, isn't it? That's, in India we don't kind of realize this because we are a very low inflation country. So we borrow and lend to the friends and all without charging the interest. It means the cost of friendship is the interest foregone. And in these countries, the cost of interest foregone is enormous. So, like I have a friend who was a college friend, and he has borrowed 50,000 from me about 10-12 years back, and he doesn't show any signs of returning it. And so I don't have any, I'm okay, but if I was in, I know 50,000 means today possibly will be 10,000 something, not zero. But in these countries, if you kind of borrow and then to pay back, you are paying back nothing but that should be made, absolutely making sure that people are taking advantage of you. So that's kind of not an acceptable behavior. So you can see the friendship also, at least financial transactions among the friends die out in the hyperinflation countries. They will not be there.
Basically, borrow from time now, wait for hyperinflation to come.
Well, that's in India you will be waiting forever. This is kind of some of the data for hyperinflation in different countries. And you see Austria from 1st October 1921, 1922, the initial and the final price. This is a ratio. The final price is in the numerator and the base price is in the denominator. The price went up by 70 times. So whatever was rupee 1, it became 70 rupees in the end of the period. And average monthly inflation was 47%. And average monthly money printing increase was 31%. Germany we already discussed. Greece 4.7 raised to power 10. But why 10 raised to power 6? Sorry. That's the inflation rate. 365% per month. 220% is increased money supply. Then Hungary 2, Poland, Russia. So these are the 1920s, and this is around Second World War, you see, 45, 46. They didn't experience such a problem. So that these are only countries which have had huge hyperinflation problems. So this is
the TBS time period corresponding 21-22 is just before the Great American Depression of 24 onwards.
29 actually was the Great Depression, not 21.
No, 24.
29.
Fine. Now all these countries, these are European countries.
Yes.
Now Germany we leave out at this stage because France started after the Versailles Treaty of Versailles and all that. France started acting tough in Germany, so we leave the Weimar Republic away. Rest of the countries, Austria, Greece, Hungary, Poland, and Russia. Now, I mean, what is left of Europe then?
What is left of Europe? Mostly England is left. That's one.
Except England.
And I think all these Scandinavian countries are down there. Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Switzerland.
Small countries are compared to them. Their economies are very, very young.
So this actually gives you a historical actually evidence of one interesting thing. If you're reading newspaper, what do you observe between the behavior of European countries versus US is what is different? If you just think about it, I'll tell you in a minute. But what do you think is the basic this transit crisis the two countries are experiencing, European countries and US? Their response is very different. Can you see in one kind of a line what is the basic difference between their two approaches? And that's not to do with this.
Austerity versus focusing on growth.
Okay, but can you be more specific? Because that's kind of a little general.
Americans are more materialistic, whereas Europeans are more towards the human development.
No, I'm just looking for something. Yes.
Sir, Americans print money without any
Americans wanted to
See the
earn.
money printing here compared to this US is nothing.
No.
How much money printing they have done at some stage?
Americans increase the income side and Europeans perhaps decrease the expenditure side.
Okay, that's the result. But what is the main policy tool or something they do whenever it's time for that?
They go to war.
Increase in their production to have a
I can reduce to one macroeconomic.
The Americans start wars all over the globe.
Let me tell you, I think possibly you have some different perspective, but I'm trying to tell you is US basically concentrates on growth because of the Great Depression. They've seen Great Depression. US has never seen hyperinflation. US is never there in very high inflation. But Europe, as you will see, as you said, most of the Europe is represented, they have seen hyperinflation. So the policy response in US is always growth oriented. In Europe is always inflation oriented. So they are always worried about inflation. And Americans are always worried about depression. So the policy response is always exactly the opposite. US will never bother about too much about inflation because inflation has never been out of control for them. But Europeans, since they have seen hyperinflation and the result of hyperinflation, you saw the example, the newspaper price, its implications are really serious social implications. If inflation goes beyond certain levels, there will be a social crisis. The social crisis of hyperinflation, Europe has seen. Social crisis resulting from Great Depression, Americans have seen. I think some of the Charlie Chaplin movies also you might have seen. I think it's Modern Times or something. In which he's eating a boiled stew because there's nothing available to eat. The stew is made of leather, so he's boiling the stew, Charlie Chaplin, one of the movies, and he's eating that because there's nothing available to eat. That's the Great Depression. Europeans have never seen Great Depression. That's why what they have seen is crisis of a different type when the inflation goes out of control. The results are similar. But the main kind of fear, phobia Americans have is about that unemployment becomes 30% and the growth goes to virtually negative 25%. Here, they believe it's because of inflation similar results happen. That's why you see the present crisis which is happening. They are not ready to spend more government. They think about austerity because they see that inflation if goes out of control, then we will have a crisis. Because they are seeing when the governments are irresponsible, they start printing too much money. And that actually leads to very high inflation and that leads to a collapse. Whereas Americans see that they never really have kind of done this in a very aggravating manner. So they have always kind of been suffering because of a demand problem and they have not used kind of and in depression, inflation is not a problem. In depression what happens? Price is going down. That's why this is a kind of another kind of what you call sometimes you may learn in some other courses and all. People's behavior, they are affected by the history. There are some events which basically guide the entire psyche of the nation. And that's one of the important things. Euro is national currency of Europe.
I don't know what currency is US. So what is trading in US?
Yes. That I don't know. I have to think about that.
Because if companies start wanting to encash in US dollars, because you have nothing to do that.
So US assets and liabilities, you just match. That's not true. Whatever foreign investment they have outside, and whatever debt foreigners have on them, there will be few billion, maybe $400, $500 billion. We have a huge foreign investment outside. The Coca-Cola here is like. So it's really pushed on to the shove. That can be one way to kind of force the Coca-Cola company to help the American government. In the meantime, later on, you will be taken care of. And this is the situation in the recent times, in the Latin American countries.
I want to ask a simple question. When a country is compared to French, French.
We will discuss. That is a separate topic itself. So this is the yeah. No, let's finish the money chapter. Once we finish the money chapter, you will be able to answer yourself. Right now, we have not discussed money. So now, this is the situation you can see in Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Nicaragua, Peru. These are the Latin American countries. And you can see the inflation rate in say Bolivia, 11,750% in 1985, and previous year was 1,281%. And then it's come down, and now it's in the regional business. And here you can see peak is around 3,000%. That's in 1990 in Brazil, and 47,000 in 1989 in Nicaragua.
That's the business of war.
Civil war was going on and all that. Sandinistas and the others.
That is the yearly average. That is the yearly average.
That is the yearly average.
What does this tell us? The cost of coffee or whatever the currency is was 47,000%.
So about 4,779 increase in the price in matter of 1 year. So one price of one, it became almost 477 rupees. In a year's time.
Became 47,000.
In 1 year. And what is the implication of that?
More money.
Yeah, basically there will be a huge social crisis. People will not be able to afford things, and there will be obviously either it will because of the civil war will happen, or because of this civil war can happen. Both ways kind of will be. And these 2 decades for the Latin American countries were zero growth. There was no growth when the inflation becomes too high, because you will start having negative growth. Or when you have negative growth, so that you can see hyperinflation on one extreme and deflation on the other extreme have exactly the same result. So that's why we need to be kind of always be careful about it.
Sir, in case of you see inflation coming down from 2,945 to 23%. How is it possible?
There will be a lot of kind of details in those. Basically, there will be a lot of foreign loans will be coming in, which will basically the World Bank and all IMF will impose strict restrictions on many things and all. So your government expenditure has to be controlled, deficit has to be controlled. Why do you have a huge amount of inflation? And here the other part is not available, which is your money supply growth. But you could see the previous table. High inflation is very closely related to high growth in the money supply. So these countries, when the inflation was high, must be doing what? They must be printing a lot of money. So how do you kind of control money printing? Why do you need government needs to print money? Normally to finance deficit. When can you not finance deficit and you have to print money? What is the
When is the deficit there?
When I'm
if the deficit is there? When is the deficit there? Is it when your expenditure more than your if you are in a war, then people may not be paying up the revenue. Whatever tax you are supposed to collect, you may not be able to collect. The other is spending a lot of money for wasteful expenditure. So both things, when you are under some kind of structural adjustment known by IMF or World Bank, they will ask you to kind of change your behavior, which means there will be huge austerity and all that. They will ask you. This is what the Greece and Ireland and all been asked. Let's not go into all the things at one stage. Let's go step by step.
But 1 year you can actually have this sort of a results are coming down from 3,000 to 23%.
That's basically some kind of thing. But if the government expenditure is suddenly controlled and your money printing is suddenly reduced, then immediately the impact is visible. What happens when you have too much money chasing too few goods? That's the result. And now to reduce the money supply itself, then that problem significantly reduces.
What is the conclusion here?
Yeah, but the thing is, that's why it's a yearly thing. So next year, inflation has come down, but doesn't mean that it has come down from a kind of a, the price has not come down. Price has still maintained. That means if you're going from 50,000% to 23%, that means next year prices are increasing only by 23%, but they are still increasing.
So
There's no negative inflation anywhere.
So from 47,000 to 23,
Yeah.
prices are still say very high.
Yes, and on that now 20% increase has taken place.
So the economic problem must be still there.
So that's why, thing is, obviously I am not giving you the recent data. See, here it has come down 0.1. This is Argentina, 3.4.2. This is okay, more reasonable, from 93 onwards. And, well, okay, I'll give you the data on and those who are interested in more details can read it.
So it's a prices after the very high inflation rate, 47,000, etc. Today's whatever the inflation rate is, with the price comes ultimately, or it remains low.
See, what happens, like when you have 47% inflation, I think you, if you have traveled to some country, very interesting country, one is Zimbabwe, or even Vietnam, I had gone 3-4 years back. I was paid roughly per day $1 million. So sounds a very big number, but actually in dollar terms it will be about $100 or $200 or $300 or something, because they exchange it correspondingly, and then the currency note will be printed in millions. So effectively,
It's like the rupiah, Indonesian rupiah.
so these countries basically started having a new currency, which is say now is equal to 50,000 is equal to 1, or 1 million is equal to 1. So that's how you kind of you adjust when you guys.
So that, understood, so that is how to suck out the currency, excess printed notes out of the system also. That you bring new ones and, but what I meant to say is the 47,000, suppose an item costs about 100 rupees, hypothetically, when the inflation was 47. Thereafter it has gradually fallen down. Now from 100 rupees was a very high figure, because 2 years before that it was barely costing 1 rupee. Now has it fallen down? No. So it is still at 100.
It is increasing by now a lower proportion.
That means what they have done is same thing what Russians did at one period
Yes.
of time with the Kopek and the rubles.
Yes.
They just divided it by that and said that instead
Yeah,
of
this one is-
1,000 rubles, 300 rubles.
Yeah, this is Germany also did the same thing. Now let me give you a cartoon because I think and this is a cartoon for inflation and deflation problem. Now in the 70s and 80s, this is, you can guess who is this. This is Alan Greenspan. Obviously now he's not so popular as he was popular a few years back. He is controlling a dragon, and he says that it appears the worst is behind us. And yes, the worst is behind us. We have a great season coming up, which is a deflation problem. So this dragon has two heads. One is inflation, the other is deflation. So don't think that by controlling inflation you solve the problem. You might have started the deflation problem. This is what happened in Japan and in the recent time in Europe and US. And you can never say that I have controlled both sides. You can control only one at a time. That's why this is a, you can say, price dragon, which you can never control. So that way, try to control both sides. It's like you always have to balance, and which is basically very, very difficult thing. That's why the job of a central banker is always very difficult. Although it sounds very easy, that controlling inflation, but if you control too much, then also you will trouble.
These problems are not there in barter system or in open.
We discuss barter system also in more detail. Many of you have questions which I want to answer, but there is ahead. In my scheme of the course. So just hang on. All these questions will be answered. So this is the main reason for inflation. Broadly two categories: demand pull, the demand increases, like we discussed demand supply curve, or cost, which is supply curve goes back, then also leads to inflation. And the cost can increase for two reasons: either wage, either labor, or some other input cost, or profit. It's found on for profit. That also will push the supply curve at the to the left. That also leads to inflation. And this is the same thing in the graph term. Like if demand increases, your price will go up. and the other is if the supply curve shifts backward, will also lead to inflation. And why inflation is not liked for people? Yes.
Any profit push on inflation?
Just like profit is also a factor of production. I mean, there's like your labor, you have land, you have interest, you are an entrepreneur. If any of these factors ask for more money, then your supply curve shifts backward. It is the 4 factors of production.
More profit will lead to more demand or something?
So more profit will lead to higher prices. And higher price means supply curve will shift backward. I want instead of 10% profit, 20% profit. So supply curve was here, now it will be here.
So we have the graph.
So that price was here, price was higher. And this is one of the major explanations for hyperinflation. Let me add to that. What happens in hyperinflation is that if your major part of your economy's factor inputs are all indexed. Suppose like we have our salary index. Suppose everybody in the country salary was indexed. Is there a problem with inflation? First question. Everybody, whenever inflation goes up, their income go up by the same proportion. Which means in real terms your salary is there. What will happen?
Stagnation status quo.
So what is the implication of that?
Supply will keep on going up.
So supply go up. Everybody inflation was 10% and everybody gets 10% as a GA. So then the income is the same. Now what is the basic cost of production? Price has only basically what is the base cost plus say profit. Only has 42 components. Let's make it simple. All your interest, rent is all here and wage is in. Now suppose the price is, so what is the real price? Suppose I make it 1, this will be W by P and this will be profit by price. This is the real dividing by price. So what will happen? If the inflation goes up, this will go up. Yes, if this goes up, what happens to this? It goes down. And what happens to this?
Also reduce.
Yes, the thing is, this is 1. So if this part goes down, what must happen to this part? The profit must increase, isn't it? As profit increases, what happens? My profitability increases, what should I do as an investor?
Produce more.
I'll produce more, I'll invest more, supply will increase. As supply will increase, what happens? Employment will increase. As employment increases, income will increase. As income increases, consumption will increase, and then they have a virtuous cycle. So that's the supply. Before supply, you have to say investment. I'm going step by step. So that's the positive. But the thing is, if it goes too much, this also increases inequality. The profit earners are getting more income, the wage earners are getting less income. Now, if everybody's salaries are indexed, then whenever inflation goes up, wage also goes up by the same proportion. This supply positive impact will not work. Is it clear?
Sir, to start with one basic stuff. When you said P will increase, then that component.
This is real wage.
So that
Money wage divided by price is your real wage.
that will decrease.
That will decrease.
But again, as far as profit is concerned, there also P is in the denominator.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is, this P also is divided by P. This is same. So this also has kind of a old price, and then this also goes up. But because this has to be 1. This has to be now. Suppose it was 50-50 earlier. Now this goes up. This is less than 50.
Right.
Take a simple example. This is 50. This is 50. So then this was equal to 100. Now if this part, if the price goes up from 100 to 110, then what happens to this? This reduces. From 100 I will make it 110. This will be now. This is still 50. What will happen to this? 60. This becomes 60. Isn't it? So the moment it becomes 60, this is more profitable. If it is more profitable, I invest more. If it is more, if I invest more, supplies go up, and more people get employment, and that will have a positive impact on the economy. But the moment you say that whenever this goes up, this also goes up in the same proportion, what happens?
Profit reduces.
Profit goes up.
Remains constant.
So price goes up. This also goes up by the same proportion. I'm not saying the same amount. This goes by 10%. This also goes by 10%. Not 10 units. Same thing.
Phi also goes 10%.
So that means 52 will become 55. So which basically means this also, so the ratio remains the same. There is no extra increment in the output. Isn't it? So that's the basic impact. Now look at a situation, suppose the inflation is very low or say 0. So that means this does not change. This also does not change. This also does not change. What is normally workers expect every year? All of us expect every year? Little more, isn't it? The moment it's a little more, this is the same. Inflation is 0. This goes up slightly, say 50 to 51, 1% something, or 2%. And then what happens to this? This comes down, isn't it? And if this comes down, what happens? Profitability is reduced, investment will reduce. As investment reduces, supply will go down. As supply goes down, requirement will go down, and the entire economy will get into trouble. That is, sometimes if both the sides are very strong, workers are very strong, and the capitalists are very strong, what will happen? Now let me give an example of hyperinflation. Now suppose these are the equations, but stable equation. Both the sides, workers and the capitalists are equally powerful. Now some third thing comes in, the cost of production goes up. Say oil price increase. What will happen? First impact of oil price, this will go up. The moment this goes up, this has to increase. This has to increase, which means cost of production goes up. And profit guy says, we will not compromise, we take the same profit. So what happens? Immediately, there will be feedback impact, price will again go up. And then this kind of a price increase will again wage increase, profit again increase, then again price goes up. So this becomes a wage price spiral. And that can lead to the problem of hyperinflation. Now you get the idea about it. The labor is very strong. I mean, they are very unionized and all that thing. And your profit guys are not ready to compromise over the capital. So effectively, you can actually end up in a hyperinflation situation. Of a third reason, which is the oil price or some of the external shocks which comes to the system, that can snowball into hyperinflation. Is it clear how hyperinflation can really unless in India, why now you can see hyperinflation is not a possibility? Because the workers are not unionized. So whenever the inflation goes up, they are the ones who actually absorb all the shocks. They don't get anything extra. Very small proportion of population income is indexed. So effectively, but the problem in India is, or the flip side of that is, India is a democratic country. So if you have inflation too high, then the people will vote you out of power. And this is what now you see the present government which is not able to control inflation. And what is the likely implication in the next election? So I can write it now and you can come and check with me. This government will not last. So inflation of such a high rate with people's salary not being indexed is not an acceptable behavior of any government. People will not pardon it. And the recent impact we've seen in Delhi election.
Next वाला भी कर दो.
Huh?
Next वाला भी कर दो.
No, let me see. If you really are understanding the economy, you will do a lot of things. Because are you capable of doing a lot of things or not? That's up to you.
But even they have competent people. Unfortunately, the politics of the matter overrule their economic sense.
No, I think there are better. I mean, you have to be improving your quality of governance. Or the right people to put in place. If you are really interested in controlling inflation. The government is not able to take any decision right now. It's basically just sitting and doing nothing. It's just really waiting for election to come and they lose the power and then some other coalition will come to the power. But they have kind of given up. That's what seems to be the case. They are not able to go any forward in anything. We'll discuss that later on. So why is inflation so unpopular? I think now it should be clear. Inflation is widespread. Workers rarely keep up with the inflation. Their salaries do not increase, especially in the private sector. Whenever inflation goes up, they don't get increment. And those fixed income are really affected. People who have a fixed income, pensioners, etc., people who get they are not revised with the inflation.
सबका मूविंग वीडियो नो ऐसे ऐसे.
Only for government is right. But what is the national pension scheme and all which are coming up? Are they inflation linked? So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So what is the inflation? 2% of the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions, 98% do not have. So just because 2% people in the population are having indexed pensions 98% do not have any pension. What to talk about indexation of these? So let's not assume we are the masses. We have privileged 1% of the population. And long-term contracts are difficult to negotiate, and that's why fixed interest loans may not be kind of a on-off work anymore.
So we go back. So we generally prefer growing economy, demand-full inflation. Can we say that? In a growing economy,
demand-pull is one, but the second is that we saw the supply-pull inflation, but can you do the reverse of that? If you want to control inflation, there is question, which I will not take to answer right now, but you are actually answering the question already. What you are saying is that if you can reduce the supply cost, means you can improve the supply chain infrastructure, then your inflation will come down. But are you ready to do it? You seem to be not ready to do it. But that's a medium-term to long-term problem. You are not able to do this.
For the rises in the price levels, is it necessary that there is only one factor, that is reduction in supply, or is there any other factor also?
Like for example?
So like in the previous slides that you shown that the level of inflation rises because of the shortage in supply.
Yes. So supply in India, inflation is basically supply shortage. So right now demand is growing at a reasonably good rate. People at the lower end getting more income. But the thing is your supply bottlenecks are coming up. Supply growth is not commensurate with the demand growth. That's why your prices are increasing. And what are the prices increasing? If you really notice, fuel and food. At the moment these increase, everything else goes up. You are making television, you are employing workers, they have to pay more because they have to eat. And if you are fuel, you are transporting products, that also the cost of production goes up.
Can there be a scenario in case the supply remains same, otherwise the cost of production increases without changing supply? Is that possible?
Supply remains
same and demand remains same, but the cost of production rises, say
cost of production rises itself is supply comes into fact. Whenever cost of production rises, so what is supply is telling you? Supply is nothing but the cost of production at which you are willing to supply. And the moment your cost of production goes up, supply comes fixed factor. So can you do something? See, fuel price you cannot do it. But there is something you can do with the fuel prices. You can actually raise money to reduce your deficit. Which is basically, you can reduce your diesel subsidy by actually putting taxes on diesel vehicles, diesel cars, diesel jeeps. Because if they stay in Delhi, you see, now right now 70% of the cars sold in Delhi are diesel cars.
Already prices are higher by almost 1 lakh.
Yeah, so company are taking advantage because demand has gone up, and so they are actually raising the price of diesel cars. Now, if these companies had not increased the price, government would have easily got this extra revenue. Because the company actually increased the price, you put extra 1 lakh rupees on all the Mercedes, all your Tata Indicas and everything, by proportionately obviously. So you can increase the Mercedes price by 5 lakhs and you can increase Indica by 50 or 70,000. And that should give you immediate impact on the kind of, you're reducing the money which is available for the subsidies and all. Fiscal level will reduce. And second is food. Food, actually you see in the today's newspaper or something, in Madhya Pradesh there is overproduction of wheat. And they don't know how to store it, where to take it.
So they need to liquor.
Whatever, that's, so in fact this is also a failure of the supply chain. Your food prices are high and there is one place where, a lot of places in India, where food is rotting. You don't have it now, kind of a storage facility or kind of a supply chain mechanism. So people in Delhi or other cities and all paying very high food prices, but to have overproduction. So this is kind of again supply problem. So a lot of these things, to answer this question, are possible, but are you kind of good enough to do it all these things? Unless there is crisis, you don't do. My old so this I think we discussed. So could you kindly go back now? Like those inflation, disinflation. All these slides are here, so kind of this is just an example. Slower increase in prices is inflation, and fall in prices is decrease. Okay. Now what happens? What are the problems with deflation? Price uncertainty, profit fall uncertainty. Now if you take the same thing, if the prices are falling, what will happen? Wages will not reduce. Production will. Profit will go down. Suppose it's from 100 to 90, and workers obviously you cannot tell them I will give you less wages, isn't it? It will be very difficult. workers are being told that, although it might be in their own interest, but obviously they will not accept. And then what happens? The only thing they get squeezed is profit. The moment you squeeze profit, what will happen? Investment goes down, production. And then entire vicious circle starts. And high real interest rate. If your inflation is negative, what will happen? Now interest rate is say 10%, and inflation comes down from say 10% to 2%. What happens with that economy's investment cost? Goes up drastically.
People save money.
Then again you are staying back to the vicious circle will start. And real whatever debt goes up. If you have taken a debt in the past and inflation goes down, in real terms your debt actually goes up. Your debt servicing goes up. So actually you get into deeper problems. Now you can see the entire US story, bank crisis and all that. Because if the inflation goes down, and the Japanese problem also, that anybody who has borrowed money suddenly has to pay more money back. And this is going to happen to India also. We are borrowing a lot of money from international currencies, external commercial borrowing. What is the result of that will be happening after some time when the rupee depreciates. You borrowed say today $100, which means say 50 rupees exchange rate, you borrowed your 5,000 rupees. But tomorrow exchange rate is 60 rupees. How much do you have to pay back? You have to pay more dollars back. I mean actually you have to pay same dollars back, but in terms of local currency, you have to pay back more, which means suddenly your debt goes up significantly. And if your exchange rate it goes down by say 50%, you can imagine what will happen. And this is what is likely to happen in India. Exchange rate will touch to, my guess is at least 65 rupees within the next 1 year. So this part I think I already discussed, that deflation link, falling prices, falling profit, fall, leading to recession. And this cartoon. And now you can see the supply chain point I was telling you, your issue partly is answered here. After 20 years of being sluggish, US productivity growth accelerated sharply in the late 1990s, that is starting in the late 90s. It grew at a much faster rate. What caused that acceleration was it the rise of the internet. Not according to analysis at McKinsey, the famous business consulting firm, they found that the major source of productivity improvement after 1995 was a surge in the output per worker in retailing, in productivity, in retailing. Stores were selling much more merchandise per worker. And why did the productivity surge in retailing in the US? The reason can be explained in just 2 syllables. Walmart. Wrote McKinsey. Walmart has been a pioneer in using modern technology to improve productivity. For example, it was one of the first companies to use computers to track inventory, to use barcode scanners to establish direct electronic links with suppliers and so on. It continued to set at the pace in the 1990s, but increasingly other companies have imitated Walmart's business practices. There are 2 lessons from Walmart effect, as McKinsey calls it. One is that how you apply technology makes all the difference. Anyone in the retail business knew about computers, but Walmart figured it out what to do with them. The other is that a lot of economic growth comes from everyday improvement rather than glamorous new technologies. That's the another counter evidence which the government tend to believe, that if you have a major new high-tech industry coming up, country will be doing very well. It's all nonsense. You have to do small improvements, and that can actually be small impact can add up to huge jumps. And the second impact of the low inflation in the last 20 years has been the growth of China as a manufacturing hub. China has been able to supply a lot of the product at a very cheap price, partly because of the low cost of production, and second, by undervaluing its exchange rate. So these 2 factors have significantly contributed to very low inflation in the world economy in the last 2 years. China's impact. China's low manufacturing cost and the very undervalued exchange rate. China has done a human service to the world. Yes, and we should be thankful to them. But we are criticizing them. They have done huge welfare increase in the world economy by producing goods at such a cheaper price. And they have helped themselves also by creating more employment and just making the GDP grow almost 4 or 5 times in a matter of 15-20 years. This is another joke from the Economist magazine. This is about how the oil price increases and how much the world economy can withstand. And you see, as the oil price goes up, that impact becomes kind of a serious and the growth starts to slow down.
China is not a bubble.
China is not a bubble. Well, that's what people are believing for the last 30 years. You have to go to China to see. China is actually much more intelligent, you can say, machine, which is basically, like in India, we do it in a very scattered way, like democratic country, and that diversity, everybody has to be taken along. So that's why we cannot be bubble. But China can actually make all these, what the normal countries will be bubble, can actually make it stand on its feet. And that's what I think we have been able to do. And that's a phenomenal achievement after a huge failure in the initial years. And I think you might remember there was some British Prime Minister who said, the Chinese or China is a giant, let it sleep. The moment it wakes up, it will be enormous problem for the rest of the world. I think Churchill or somebody at one point said, and that I think the giant has broken up. And Churchill was among the country which really took advantage of China when China was, they were exporting opium and all that. And there's a very interesting novel which is actually based on real world. Amitabh Ghosh has a novel called Sea of Poppies. You might recall India was one of the biggest supplier of opium to China.
Sea of Poppies.
Not because we wanted to do it, but because British masters told us to do that. So, Bihar and all the places and all, used to actually grow around this opium. And that opium basically, British companies used to buy it from India and through Hong Kong sell it in China. And obviously Chinese emperors did not like it because it was basically promoting a lot of this laziness among the Chinese, and they were kind of not really working very hard. And so, there were I think two Chinese war, opium wars is what where basically the Chinese tried to kind of throw the Britishers out, and actually they lost the war. And the war lost in 1897 or something. It resulted in the Treaty of Hong Kong, which in Hong Kong was forced by the Britishers to be given on rent to Chinese, to the British by the Chinese for 100-year lease. And that lease expired in 1997. And that's why British and the Chinese actually do not like the British because they were armed with into taking that island. And again, if you read first chapter of this book, you will get all these stories, actually, not stories, they're actual factual things from the point of view of the history how it has evolved. And Hong Kong was the major hub, and Hong Kong was a British colony. You must be knowing that. And it's not taken over, it's basically we're supposed to come back. You borrowed not from me, you're returning to me. It's not taking it back, it's my own thing. You are supposed to give your written contract.
Who said the land of there?
I mean, it's my place, so my troops are, how does it matter to you? So it doesn't make any difference.
Because Hong Kong did not want to go to China.
It's not Hong Kong's choice. It is my territory, which you have taken on British, I mean, especially British didn't want to give to China, is it? It was not that Hong Kong didn't want to go to China.
No, the general population also wanted.
The population basically, it's like somebody takes your house on rent and says, I have not done it. Because people were staying at that house and they said, well, I don't want to go back to you. So that's the same thing. It's a very big context. Very context. And Macau was also the same story, and China gave Taiwan also, which I get predict by the Americans and all. And when they say that Taiwan is also part of our mainland, and it was till 1949. So you cannot deny any factual things. And the only problem is China goes to the other extreme. It's many times small islands with every neighboring country China has a problem. Like you have a problem with Japan, you have a problem with Russia, you have a problem with Vietnam, India, so many countries. Like we have Tibet problem and all this Northeast Arunachal problem. So China in a way become more assertive in this. This is what Churchill had warned, that this is going to happen. So China actually, due to the leftist ideology and all, has promoted nationalism in a very extreme way. And that also is one of the reasons that they are really aggressive about their behavior. Which I think is not untrue for Americans also. Americans also, once they got the power, they started throwing their weight around. The only thing is they got a match, so that's the problem.
But China is supplying finished product even less than the cost of the raw material. How are they doing it?
The cost of production may be low, but if I keep my exchange rate
I think the cost of raw material.
Cost of raw material in your country, no? Suppose it's 100 in my country, China. I make the exchange rate undervalued. Half price.
You are relying on you are partnering your problem. In China, everybody is raw material is free. It is free.
Can you explain that? What exchange rate? But if you have some specific very small point, I can spend on that. What is the statement you made?
No, sir, I will give you an example.
Suppose the cost of production is high. Like 100 rupees, like 100. Now, how can I make it export cheaper? I will undervalue my currency by 50% or 100%, 60%, whatever the percentage may be. I can do it and then make the product competitive. So I thought.
No, sir, I will give you an example, sir. I just wanted to give you a share. Sir, in India, that Diwali time, studies are there.
Yes, yes.
Earlier we had a big industry for that. Now that industry is finished because China has taken it. Now we all have experienced that cost of 25 rupees for 4 meter or something. The copper and the rubber and the bulbs, the cost price.
That will give you raw material cost in India. What is raw material cost in China? It's free.
How much less it can be? 20 rupees they are selling that product, and it has got some supply chain. Some people are making profit out of it, and production cost must be half of that. So at that price, is it practical that the copper is being purchased at that price?
Because see, if my country believes that export is the most important thing, and I will do anything I want for getting the foreign exchange, and this is what China has done. And India is trying to do the same thing, and this is what Japan did at one stage, this is what entire East Asian countries did at one stage. They all undervalued the exchange rate to push exports on foreign exchange. So once you have a foreign exchange, then you can import what you want. Why do you need foreign exchange? If you don't want to import anything, foreign exchange is useless for you. Like China now is realizing that too much foreign exchange is also a useless thing. Now China is realizing that I want a lot of foreign exchange and I do not have much use for it, and now they are trying to change exchange rate. And I have a friend whom I met in China actually in 2007. I went for their seminar. He's an Indian. I never met him in India. He's one of the exporter to Europe and US. He makes integrated circuits. So he about 5 years back bought a company in China. Because China is a small company, a lot of companies go bankrupt. And then China has a relatively open system, anybody can come and buy the company also. So this guy bought a company in China. Now, he wants to actually buy the company and export to India. This product is making great circuit. But the problem is, the demand in China is so much that he's not able to kind of send anything to India. But now in recent days, I was just talking to him last week because we're trying to do a case study for his company. And he was saying that now Chinese exchange rate has kind of gone up so much in last 1 or 2 years that we are now thinking of relocating to India because India has become a cheaper destination. So it's a strategy. China has realized that now it's no more trying to help the world, your point, by giving them cheaper product for my country. Because in a way, what are you doing? You're compromising your country's welfare for the sake of the foreigners.
The wages are also
rising. So it's by default. So the moment your exchange rate appreciates, your domestic wages automatically go up. Because Chinese are getting yuan. Now the same yuan was worth earlier, say 8 yuan to $1. Now 8 yuan will be more than $1. So automatically the salaries will go up. So automatically if you are a foreign investor, you suddenly say now China's labor cost has gone up by 25%. So might as well go to some other country where the labor costs are still cheaper. So India by default comes as a second destination. Although India has other problems, you have infrastructure problems, but whatever is feasible to produce in India cheaply, you try to relocate in India.
When you say undervalue the currency means 8 to 1.
Yeah, $2. It is base.
base currency goes up and base currency goes down.
Like India exchange rate is 50, you make it 100 rupees. What happens to the export? Suppose you are exporting a bottle, this is say in India 50 rupees. I mean, exchange rate 50 rupees, so how much you will be exporting for $1? Now suppose the exchange rate 100 rupees. Now you will same bottle you will be able to sell for 50 cents. So then eventually your export will go to the roof. You will earn out for exchange. Again, so that's the usual strategy that we use. And Japan is used and many other countries are used. Okay, that I think takes care of this. But again, there is one small point here also. The countries which benefit from oil are the Gulf countries. And the problem is, how do you keep the entire oil price high?
Reducing
Always producing less, isn't it? By fertilization, that's another way to say same thing. That's what the Gulf countries have done. But the problem is cartels are inherently unstable. So what happens? If the oil prices go up too high, what happens? Like take a simple demand supply curve again. Take a simple demand supply curve. What are you doing? You are reducing the supply to increase the oil price. The moment you increase the oil price, what will happen? Demand will fall, isn't it? And second impact on the world economy, if the oil price starts going up, growth goes down. Growth goes down, and growth goes down, the demand also will start going down. So you increase the price, but after some time, it will start going down. And second thing what will happen, if the oil prices go up too high, what is the other implication will happen?
Producing the oil get affected themselves.
That's one. Second thing is, the alternatives to the oil, they become viable. Like solar has become, now everybody talks about solar, everybody talks about wind energy and other. These were not viable when the oil price is under 100 rupees. You cannot really have a solar kind of a base power plant or anything because it's kind of not working because oil is much cheaper.
That's also the grade of the
shale gas and all those things.
shale gas, the grade of the oil,
coal-based methane and many other things. Because these things are, if the oil price stays reasonably in the limit, then these alternatives are not viable. People will not invest in it. But if oil price goes up, actually in the interest of the world is that oil prices go high. Although not in the very short term, but over time, if they keep going up, actually people will develop alternatives and the Gulf countries will be in trouble for that reason.
One aspect of the marketization does not work for all commodities. It is only specific commodities which are very, very essential and how more rare. Because
not true.
let's take a very, very real life example. Exclude of bananas from South America to America. They try to form a cartel saying that we get a lot of foreign exchange in the process. They form the cartel. America reduces demand and the banana has got a very short shelf life and so the cartel fell. So this is the thing. Secondly, when even you have precious metals or diamonds and things like that where the production is limited to a very, very small part. Here again the cost of diamonds and all that is stable or rises very gradually. This is the reason that people stop buying because right now it is not essential to your needs. So that's what I want.
Now let me give you some counter example. What do you think chip in a computer or cell phone and all is an essential product or not? Is it essential? There are many companies making it, but Samsung has been fined $7 million along with some other Kuwait producers for catalyzing its market. And in the US they paid $10 million fine. What about Visa and MasterCard? Is it essential? No, Visa and MasterCard have been fined for cartelization, again $400 million, to deliberately keeping American Express out of the market in India and other places in the world. In the US basically. They will give the fining that shop keepers and all, that you do not keep American Express swiping cards, we'll give you extra commission from Visa and MasterCard. So they are again case went.
But then this becomes marketing technique, more of a marketing thing.
No, but it is illegal. It is illegal.
That it might be illegal.
It is trained as cartelization. In the US law, it is cartelization.
But if you see that the macro level, that is what is peculiar to America is not so peculiar.
No. This is not macro, it's micro. Cartelization is micro technology. And that's why whenever firms are colluding to raise the prices, it is all considered illegal. But in the country level, in OPEC, you are able to do it because it's not a company. The country international law has not matured to the level that you can make it illegal.
One more reason, sir. OPEC is if you take the policies of America, keep it in mind, sir. OPEC is one cartel out there. America wants to play OPEC versus Iran. To keep Iraq invaded and mucked up that country. Keep Iran in check. So we have to see that point of view also.
So that is true. But the thing is, basically, in the US normally this would be illegal. But since this is a multinational cartel, it is not that. And now recently, I don't know, it's still working or not, Russia is trying to make a gas cartel. So there are only gas producers, Russians, and many other countries trying to. So it has and they are trying to extract gas. So that's kind of your oil story. And let's take a quick break and come back to the next topic. Can you stop that?